Today we take a deep look at a shocking case filled with betrayal, power, and tragedy. A sheriff's affair with a teenager leads to an unexpected pregnancy, setting off a chain of events that ends in not one, but two brutal murders. Join us as we dive into the chilling details of this tragic story and explore how a secret relationship unraveled into deadly violence. Sheriff Malcolm Cotton Gaines was a respected figure in Monroe, Louisiana. At 46, with over 20 years of service in law enforcement, he had built a solid reputation for his leadership and charm. The community admired him, seeing him as a pillar of strength and authority. Behind the badge, Malcolm had a dark secret. He had been having an affair with 19-year-old Mandy Brooks, a local waitress at the Waffle House, for several months. While he portrayed himself as a loyal husband to his wife of 20 years, Cyndie Gaines, the reality was much more complicated. His seemingly perfect life was built on lies. Cyndie Gaines, a respected schoolteacher, had long suspected Malcolm's infidelity. Although she appeared calm and composed on the outside, the rumors about her husband's behavior had been gnawing at her for years. She chose to stay in the marriage, largely for the sake of their children and to maintain their image in their close-knit community. Malcolm's controlling and at times abusive behavior put immense pressure on his marriage, leaving Cyndie feeling trapped and resentful. Meanwhile, Mandy, shy and vulnerable, was easy prey for Malcolm's manipulation. He promised her financial security and a better life, exploiting her desire for stability. Mandy had just graduated high school with dreams of going to college, but those ambitions slowly faded as her relationship with Malcolm deepened. Despite trying to stay hopeful, her anxiety grew as she realized how Malcolm was isolating her from her friends and family, pulling her further into his control. When Mandy discovered she was pregnant, her world turned upside down. The carefree waitress now felt trapped in a situation she couldn't escape. Malcolm, who had once charmed her with promises, reacted with anger and fear. His once warm demeanor shifted, and he became cold and distant, leaving Mandy feeling even more alone. Malcolm wanted nothing to do with fathering another child, especially one that could destroy his carefully crafted public image. The affair had now turned into a ticking time bomb. Mandy, scared and uncertain about her future with a baby on the way, felt lost, while Malcolm grappled with the fear of his secret unraveling and the devastating impact it could have on his reputation. The tangled emotions of this love triangle were reaching a dangerous boiling point. For Cyndie, the affair and the pregnancy was the final straw. After years of tolerating Malcolm's control and manipulation, the idea that her husband was expecting a child with someone close to their son Tyler's age became unbearable. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had faced before. In the days before his death, the cracks in Malcolm's carefully constructed image of power and authority began to show. The tension was palpable, and each person involved in this tangled web of betrayal sensed that a breaking point was near. On the morning of June 28, 2009, Sheriff Malcolm Cotton Gaines was discovered dead in his home. Around 8:15 a.m., his neighbor, Harold Jenkins, sensed something amiss and decided to investigate further. Harold, a retired postal worker, stepped outside to grab his morning paper when he noticed Malcolm's front door slightly ajar. Knowing his neighbor's meticulous nature regarding security, especially as the sheriff, this struck him as unusual. Concerned for Malcolm's well-being, Harold felt compelled to investigate. As Harold entered the house, he was immediately struck by the chaos. The living room was a mess, with cushions scattered and a vase shattered on the floor. His heart began to race as he cautiously moved toward the master bedroom, calling out for Malcolm, but silence greeted him. As he reached the doorway, Harold was paralyzed by the sight before him. Malcolm lay on the bedroom floor, motionless and surrounded by a pool of blood. The gruesome scene revealed that he had been shot multiple times, with blood splattered across the walls. The horrific sight was beyond anything Harold had ever encountered. Trembling with fear, he stumbled back out of the house and dialed 911. "There's been a murder," he reported to the dispatcher, his voice quivering. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived on the scene. The officers found Harold outside, looking pale and visibly shaken. As he recounted what he had witnessed, the police quickly moved inside the house to investigate further. They later described the crime scene as chaotic and violent, indicating a fierce confrontation. Malcolm had been shot multiple times in the head, chest, and genital area, showing that the attack had been brutal and unexpected. His service revolver, the weapon used in the murder, lay on the floor beside him. The house bore signs of a struggle, with overturned furniture and shattered glass, yet nothing appeared to be missing. This led investigators to conclude that the attack was personal rather than a random robbery. Detective Tillman quickly summoned a full forensics team, officially launching the investigation into Sheriff Gaines's murder. The small town of Monroe was about to uncover the shocking secrets their beloved sheriff had kept hidden. Within minutes of Harold Jenkins' 911 call on June 28, 2009, police arrived at Malcolm Gaines's home. Detective Marcia Tillman, a seasoned investigator with 15 years on the Monroe Police Department, took charge of the case. Renowned for her straightforward demeanor, Tillman quickly began evaluating the chaotic crime scene. The house was a mess, with furniture overturned, shattered glass, and a pool of blood surrounding Malcolm's lifeless body in the master bedroom. He had suffered 3 gunshot wounds, one to the chest and another to the genital area. The shots to Malcolm's head and chest indicated a calculated murder, but the gunshot wound to his genitals was particularly striking. Detective Tillman and her team speculated that this shot was intentional, likely driven by anger or a desire for revenge, hinting at a profoundly personal motive. It wasn't just about ending his life, Tillman would later explain. This was about sending a message. The use of Malcolm's service revolver in the attack suggested that the shooter was someone familiar with his life and daily routines. Forensic teams were called in to comb the scene for additional clues. They meticulously photographed the blood spatter on the bedroom walls and collected evidence from the broken vase and disordered furniture. There were no signs of forced entry, indicating that Malcolm likely knew his attacker and had let them into his home willingly. This detail, along with the gunshot wound to his genitals, hinted that the crime was fueled by strong emotions, such as rage, jealousy, or betrayal. By late afternoon, the police had started to construct a preliminary timeline of events. Malcolm had likely been attacked late the night before or in the early hours of the morning. The nature of his wounds, the absence of stolen items, and the disarray in the house confirmed that this was not a robbery gone awry. Instead, it was a targeted killing, with the genital wound suggesting a deeply personal or sexual motive behind the brutal act. Detective Tillman and her team shifted their focus to identifying individuals who might have wanted Malcolm dead. As they collected evidence, they readied themselves to interrogate those closest to him, fully aware that in a small town like Monroe, hidden secrets rarely remained concealed for long. One of the first people the police spoke with was Cyndie Gaines, Malcolm's wife of 20 years. When Cyndie sat down with Detective Marcia Tillman on the evening of June 28, 2009, her demeanor was calm, but her eyes reflected years of unhappiness and betrayal. She revealed that her marriage to Malcolm had been troubled for quite some time and admitted that she had suspected his infidelity for years. "I just knew," she told the detective. There were too many signs. She explained how she often stumbled upon clues of Malcolm's unfaithfulness in their shared SUV. It began with small items, stray hair clips, and unfamiliar perfumes, but things escalated when she discovered a thong under the passenger seat, followed by used condoms hidden in the glove compartment. Each discovery solidified her fears Malcolm was indeed cheating on her. However, her suspicions were ultimately confirmed in the most shocking way imaginable. About 4 months before Malcolm's murder, Cyndie returned home unexpectedly from her job as a schoolteacher. She opened the door to the living room and was met with a sight that shattered her world. Malcolm and Mandy Brooks, the 19-year-old waitress from Waffle House, caught in a compromising position on their couch. "I couldn't believe it," she recalled, her voice trembling with the memory. "I just stood there frozen, watching my husband with a girl young enough to be his daughter," she told the police, her voice tinged with pain. The betrayal hit her hard, leaving her feeling crushed and humiliated. She confronted Malcolm right away, but he brushed her off, claiming that what she had witnessed wasn't significant. It was just sex, he insisted, as if it were trivial. "It doesn't mean anything." Cyndie's voice shook as she replied, "but it meant everything to me, as if the affair wasn't enough." Cyndie soon discovered that Mandy was pregnant with Malcolm's child. One night, she overheard him on the phone with Mandy, discussing the pregnancy in hushed tones. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her husband was not only having an affair but was also about to have a child with someone else. After enduring so much for so long, this was the final straw for Cyndie. The revelation of the affair, combined with the news of Mandy's pregnancy, pushed her to her emotional breaking point. Cyndie felt humiliated, angry, and utterly betrayed by the man she had once loved. She told the police that she just wanted it all to end her marriage and her life. Despite her painful admissions, she maintained a calm demeanor throughout the interrogation. She denied any involvement in Malcolm's murder, insisting that while she despised his actions, she had not taken his life. The police, however, viewed her as a primary suspect, noting her clear motive rooted in years of betrayal and resentment. Meanwhile, Mandy Brooks, the 19-year-old waitress from the local Waffle House, found herself entangled in a complicated and manipulative relationship with Sheriff Malcolm Gaines. When police questioned Mandy, she recounted how Malcolm had promised her a future that seemed far beyond her current circumstances. Growing up in a small town as the daughter of a felon, Mandy had aspirations but lacked the resources to pursue them. She had dropped out of school and found herself working late shifts at the Waffle House, struggling to make ends meet. When Malcolm entered her life, everything shifted for Mandy. She told the police that he promised her the world, claiming he could provide for her and fulfill all her dreams. Despite being nearly 30 years her senior, Malcolm convinced Mandy that he would buy her a house, support her financially, and even take her on vacations. He once mentioned planning a trip for them to Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which thrilled Mandy, as she had never left Louisiana before. These promises filled her with hope, making her believe in a brighter future. However, Malcolm's charm and authority blinded her to the more troubling aspects of their relationship. However, everything changed when Mandy learned she was pregnant. In late April 2009, after weeks of nausea and fatigue, she took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Mandy was taken aback. She had never intended to get pregnant, especially not with Malcolm's child. "I didn't know what to do," she told the police, her voice filled with panic. "I felt trapped," Mandy confessed. The pregnancy left her torn. On one hand, she hoped Malcolm would fulfill his promises of financial stability and support for both her and the baby. However, the reality of their situation weighed heavily on her. On the other hand, she sensed that Malcolm's promises were empty. Deep down, she worried that he might abandon her now that she was pregnant. As the pressure mounted, Mandy felt increasingly isolated, unsure of whom she could confide in or turn to for support. Mandy's situation took a turn for the worse when Cyndie Gaines, Malcolm's wife, confronted her. She recounted the terrifying encounter when Cyndie appeared at her apartment one afternoon, brandishing a steak knife. "She knew everything and said she was going to roast my baby on an open fire," Mandy recalled, her voice shaking. The threat left Mandy feeling utterly cornered and afraid, realizing just how dangerous the situation had become. Cyndie accused Mandy of destroying her marriage and pressed her to confirm whether the pregnancy was genuine. Trembling with fear, Mandy reluctantly admitted the truth. "I was scared," she told investigators, her voice barely above a whisper. The confrontation left her shaken and acutely aware of the perilous nature of her situation. Cyndie was furious, and Mandy was terrified, unsure of what Cyndie might do next. Overwhelmed by guilt and shame, Mandy found herself trapped in a love triangle spiraling out of control. She expressed to the police that although she desperately wanted to escape the situation, she never imagined it would lead to violence. Her vulnerability and fear made her a suspect, but Mandy maintained that she lacked the strength or rage to kill Malcolm. Despite her complicated situation, the affair and her pregnancy drew her deeper into the investigation, making her a crucial player in uncovering the truth. The investigation took an unexpected turn as police delved further into Malcolm Gaines' relationship with Mandy Brooks. During another intense interrogation, Mandy broke down, revealing the troubling details of how Malcolm had been manipulating her for months. The officers were taken aback as she described the emotional stranglehold he had on her life. It wasn't just his promises of a house or a trip to Dollywood that kept her tethered to him. He had also preyed on her insecurities and vulnerabilities, using her fears of inadequacy to maintain control over her. Malcolm's manipulation extended even further. Mandy revealed that her mother, a felon with a history of drug offenses, was currently incarcerated. Using his position as sheriff, Malcolm had threatened Mandy, saying that if she ever tried to leave him or disclose the pregnancy, he would leverage his influence to have her mother mistreated in prison. This threat loomed over Mandy, deepening her sense of entrapment and fear. The fear and pressure this created left Mandy feeling utterly cornered. As the police listened to her story, the depth of Malcolm's manipulation became apparent. This wasn't merely a reckless affair, it was a calculated game of power and control that had ensnared her in a web of fear and uncertainty. It was a clear abuse of power that left Mandy feeling terrified and trapped. Detectives were filled with anger and disgust at how Malcolm had exploited her vulnerability. One officer later described his actions as a shocking betrayal of trust and authority, labeling him a despicable individual. But the story didn't end there. Mandy revealed that she had previously dated Malcolm's son, Cyndie Gaines, before getting involved with the sheriff. Their relationship had ended just months prior to her affair with Malcolm, and Tyler was completely unaware that his father had become her new partner. The discovery of Mandy's prior relationship with Cyndie Gaines significantly deepened the complexity of the case. Tyler, estranged from his father for years due to past conflicts, had already confronted Malcolm after learning about the affair. Though Tyler had no knowledge of Mandy's pregnancy at the time, his anger toward his father fueled suspicions. Investigators now had to consider whether Tyler's rage at both his father's betrayal and the discovery of Mandy's relationship could have motivated him to seek revenge. This revelation introduced a new layer of emotional conflict and potential motives, shifting the focus of the investigation once again. Detectives began to question whether Tyler had anything to do with the murder, or if Mandy's choices were the result of Malcolm's threats. The control Malcolm had over Mandy, combined with the complex relationships within the Gaines family, turned the investigation into something much darker than anyone had anticipated. Cyndie Gaines, 21, was known around town as unpredictable. People described him as someone with a short fuse and a wild lifestyle, often getting involved in reckless behavior. Tyler's relationship with Mandy Brooks had always been rocky. In the end, she decided to break things off with him because of his constant cheating. Tyler had a reputation for being unfaithful, not only with other women but with men as well, making the relationship even more unstable. Mandy's friends recalled how devastated she had been when she found out about Tyler's infidelity. The betrayal cut deep, especially since she had already endured so much emotional pain. But what made the situation even more disturbing was Tyler's violent streak. Though he seemed quiet to those who didn't know him well, in private, Tyler had a dangerous temper. During her police interrogation, Mandy dropped a bombshell: Tyler had physically abused her several times. In a tearful admission, she revealed that she had been pregnant with Tyler's child before their breakup. However, Tyler's violent behavior had caused her to miscarry on more than one occasion, a dark and heartbreaking secret she had been carrying for years. The police were taken aback by these shocking revelations, which deepened the tragedy surrounding Mandy's situation. When Tyler discovered that Mandy was pregnant with his father's child, his anger intensified. Friends noted that Tyler felt not only humiliated by Mandy's betrayal, but also deeply betrayed by his own father. The dynamic of their relationship had become even more volatile, with emotions running high and tensions escalating. Learning that his father, Malcolm, had not only taken his girlfriend but also impregnated her was overwhelming for Tyler. Friends noted that he felt utterly devastated and lost after hearing the news. One friend remembered seeing Tyler leave a local bar in a fury, visibly shaken and mumbling about needing to take care of it. The intensity of his emotions suggested that he was struggling to cope with the betrayal from both Mandy and his father. During his interrogation, Tyler's anger and frustration were evident. Police noted that he had a volatile demeanor, often struggling to keep his emotions in check as the questioning progressed. When confronted with the allegations, Tyler denied any role in his father's murder, but his animosity towards both Malcolm and Mandy was unmistakable. His tension-filled responses and aggressive body language suggested deep-seated rage and betrayal. During his interrogation, Tyler's anger and frustration were evident. Police noted that he had a volatile demeanor, often struggling to keep his emotions in check as the questioning progressed. When confronted with the allegations, Tyler denied any role in his father's murder, but his animosity towards both Malcolm and Mandy was unmistakable. His tension-filled responses and aggressive body language suggested deep-seated rage and betrayal. Despite his violent history and past abuse of Mandy, Tyler insisted he had no part in the crime. On the night of June 23, 2009, Cyndie Gaines reached her breaking point. After enduring years of suspicion, betrayal, and humiliation, she could no longer withstand the lies and manipulation from her husband, Malcolm. The emotional weight of their troubled marriage became unbearable, leading her to a moment of reckoning. The revelation of Malcolm's affair with Mandy Brooks and the news of her pregnancy shattered Cyndie. For months, she had been quietly fuming, her anger steadily escalating. Trapped in a marriage that felt suffocating, she was repulsed by the man she once adored and burdened by the heavy toll of his betrayal. That night, Cyndie confronted Malcolm in their living room. The argument began like many others, with Malcolm dismissing her concerns as mere paranoia. But this time, Cyndie was resolute. As the tension mounted, she reached for the gun Malcolm kept hidden in the closet. With shaking hands and a racing heart, she aimed the gun at her husband. In a moment of cold, quiet rage, she pulled the trigger, the bullet striking Malcolm in the groin. Investigators later speculated that the choice of target was far from accidental. It represented Malcolm's betrayal of their marriage. As he collapsed, bleeding heavily, Cyndie stood over him, watching the man she had shared so many years with slip away. In that instant, a torrent of emotions overwhelmed her. Relief, guilt, anger, and fear flooded her mind all at once. Cyndie felt a twisted sense of justification, convinced that Malcolm had earned his fate after everything he had done to her. Yet, beneath that surface of relief, a profound dread began to take hold. She realized that her life was forever changed, and there was no turning back from what she had done. What had she done? Cyndie, in a panic, tried to stage the scene, dragging Malcolm's body toward the garage in a desperate attempt to make it appear like a robbery gone wrong. But her efforts were futile. When the police arrived, they immediately spotted inconsistencies in her story. There were no signs of forced entry, and the forensic evidence didn't align with her claims. It wasn't long before the truth became clear Cyndie was their prime suspect. The weight of her actions began to settle in as the investigation unraveled her attempt to cover up the crime. The gun used in the murder was registered to Malcolm, and with no signs of forced entry, the case against Cyndie grew stronger. Under intense interrogation, the pressure became too much. Cyndie broke down, confessing to the crime. The reality of what she had done finally hit her as she tearfully admitted to shooting her husband in a moment of overwhelming anger and betrayal. As officers placed her in handcuffs, Cyndie felt a strange mixture of resignation and regret wash over her. She had believed that ending Malcolm's life would finally bring her the peace she longed for, an escape from the years of betrayal and humiliation. But instead, it brought only sorrow, and with it, the cold reality of a life behind bars. Any sense of victory was replaced by a crushing sense of emptiness. In January 2011, Cyndie Gaines faced trial for the murder of her husband, Sheriff Malcolm Gaines. The courtroom was packed with family, friends, and curious onlookers from the Monroe, Louisiana community. Cyndie's defense attorney, Lisa Beans, argued that Cyndie had been pushed to her breaking point after enduring years of emotional abuse and infidelity at Malcolm's hands. She painted a picture of a woman trapped in a toxic marriage, whose actions were driven by desperation rather than premeditation. Cyndie's defense team employed the cheated-on-wife defense, arguing that she was a victim of Malcolm's infidelity, which pushed her to her breaking point. Attorney Lisa Beans presented evidence of Malcolm's affair with 19-year-old Mandy Brooks, emphasizing the emotional toll it took on Cyndie. Testimonies revealed the disturbing discoveries Cyndie had made, including used condoms and women's underwear in the family SUV. This evidence painted a picture of ongoing betrayal that compounded her emotional distress. Beans portrayed Cyndie as a woman who had endured years of emotional abuse and was pushed to her breaking point by Malcolm's cold-hearted behavior. She framed the murder as an impulsive act in the heat of the moment, driven by deep hurt and betrayal. On the other hand, prosecutor Richard Ducey McDougall presented a starkly different picture. He argued that Cyndie's actions were premeditated, noting that she had confronted Malcolm about his affairs several times before the murder. According to McDougall, Cyndie had ample time to plan her revenge, making the killing more deliberate than she claimed. The prosecution worked to establish that Cyndie had been fully aware of her actions when she shot Malcolm, emphasizing the calculated nature of the crime. They painted a vivid picture of the murder scene, highlighting the brutality of the act and the emotional impact it had on the local community. As the trial unfolded, the courtroom became a battleground of competing narratives. Cyndie's family, visibly tense, attended every session, holding out hope that the jury would see Cyndie as a victim of her circumstances rather than a cold-blooded killer. Cyndie appeared composed in court, but beneath her calm exterior, she was overwhelmed with anxiety about the potential years of imprisonment that awaited her. The community's response to her case was divided. Some sympathized with her, believing that Malcolm's betrayal and emotional abuse had driven her to a breaking point, while others saw her as a murderer who had crossed an unforgivable line. As the trial neared its conclusion, both sides of the courtroom waited anxiously for the jury's decision. On January 21, 2011, after days of testimony and tense deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read guilty of second-degree murder. Cyndie Gaines showed little outward reaction, but those close to her knew the weight of the words had crushed her inside. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a stark end to the story of betrayal, manipulation, and murder that had gripped Monroe, Louisiana. Cyndie was convicted of second-degree murder, and the verdict felt like a devastating blow. The stress of the trial and the decision hung over her, leaving her with a deep sense of despair. Cyndie had held out hope for a more lenient sentence, thinking her struggles would be taken into account. Instead, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a decision that left her feeling crushed and defeated. Tears streamed down Cyndie's face as she grasped the reality of being separated from her children for years. The verdict sent shockwaves through the Gaines family, once respected in their community. Friends and family experienced a complex mix of relief and heartbreak, struggling to reconcile the woman they knew with the crime she had committed. Cyndie's trial and subsequent sentencing underscored the tragic consequences of infidelity and emotional abuse, leaving a lasting impact on all involved. After receiving a 25-year prison sentence for murdering her husband, Sheriff Malcolm Gaines, her life took a dramatic turn. Cyndie was sent to the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, where she confronted a harsh new reality. Many of her days were marked by solitude as she grappled with the choices that had led to such a heartbreaking act. Guilt consumed her, knowing that her actions had torn her family apart and caused suffering in the Monroe community. Meanwhile, her children faced the challenges of life without their mother's support, while Cyndie struggled to find a sense of purpose within the confines of prison. Meanwhile, the fallout from the murder trial brought unforeseen changes for Mandy Brooks and Tyler Gaines, Malcolm's son. After the trial concluded, Tyler reached out to Mandy, rekindling a connection that was complicated by their shared past. Their relationship had been tumultuous, marked by both love and betrayal, and now they found themselves navigating the emotional wreckage left behind by Malcolm's actions and Cyndie's choices. Having previously dated before her affair with his father, Tyler had a reputation for being promiscuous, but his feelings for Mandy endured despite the turmoil. They shared a deep connection rooted in their troubled histories and were both seeking to move on from the chaos that had enveloped their lives. In early 2011, just a few months after the trial, Tyler and Mandy reignited their relationship, finding solace in each other as they navigated the aftermath of the tragedy. They started spending more time together, meeting at local coffee shops and parks in Monroe. Gradually, they found solace in each other's company. Tyler, who had once been known for his violent tendencies, began to show signs of transformation as he committed to becoming a better person. With Mandy by his side, he worked on managing his anger and building a healthier future for themselves. He began attending therapy sessions to address his anger issues and focused on being a supportive partner to Mandy. By the summer of 2012, they decided to take their relationship to the next level. At a small family gathering, they announced their engagement, catching everyone off guard. Friends and family were initially surprised, but many eventually rallied around the couple, hoping for a brighter future after the turmoil they had endured. The couple tied the knot later that year in a simple ceremony at a local park, surrounded by their closest friends and family. For Tyler and Mandy, it represented a fresh start, a chance to forge a new life together without the burdens of their past. Meanwhile, Cyndie's prison experience was marked by her quest for redemption. She engaged in various therapy programs and made a concerted effort to reconnect with her children during visitation. Despite the grave consequences of her actions, she held on to the hope that, one day, she could rebuild their trust and become a part of their lives again. The intertwined paths of Cyndie, Mandy, and Tyler showcased the intricate dynamics of love, betrayal, and the lasting effects of decisions made in desperate times. Each person was attempting to find their way in the aftermath of a tragedy that had irrevocably altered their lives. A sheriff, a scandal, And A Murder, the Tale of Malcolm Gaines, stands as a poignant reminder that the abuse of power can result in catastrophic outcomes.